Hello, everybody, and welcome back to BVM Sports Chalk Talk. I'm Lucas Semb, and as always, I'm here with Scott Procter and Matt Morris, ready to deliver an NFL Draft special episode for you guys today. With the 2021 NFL Draft slated to begin on Thursday in Cleveland, we want to finish our top 10 mock picks by discussing picks 8, 9, and 10. And then we want to name our favorite non-top 10 players in the draft. But let's start with the Carolina Panthers, who are in the 8th spot entering the draft. Scott, what will the Panthers be doing with newly acquired QB Sam Darnold?
Absolutely. Sam Darnold is definitely essential to the Carolina Panthers puzzle piece. And, to be honest, the Panthers took a lot of pressure off themselves ahead of Thursday night by trading for Sam Darnold and making a decisive move at the quarterback position, something that Matt Rule has all but publicly said that he wants to upgrade. That will allow them to likely pick the best player available at a position of need at number 8. And I believe they'll afford Darnold something he didn't have much of in New York, and that's protection. Oregon tackle Penei Sewell is still on my draft board at number 8, and I believe head coach Matt Rule and the Panthers bring him to Carolina. Sewell became the first Oregon player to start as a true freshman in 20 years in 2018, and he dominated upperclassmen as a true freshman. The next season, he was named the Alvin Trophy winner for the best interior lineman in college football before obviously opting out of the 2020 season. This is a guy who has all-pro potential and only allowed one sack in more than 700 pass rush snaps, and that one sack came as a true freshman. The Panthers have their star and running back Christian McCaffrey, a young quarterback in Darnold, who they just traded for, and a valid 1-2 punch at receiver with Robbie Anderson and DJ Moore. Penei Sewell doesn't even turn 21 years old until October, so I expect Carolina to not only get much better, but get obviously much younger at arguably the second most important position in football, at left tackle, right behind quarterback. So that's the direction I envision Matt Rule and the Carolina Panthers going with, selecting Oregon tackle Penei Sewell at number 8. Matt, what do you think about that? Where do you think the Carolina Panthers go here on Thursday night?
It's not a bad guess. Obviously, I have Sewell going off earlier, but, if I were to go offensive line, I think Rashod Slater would be available at that point. You could also go with him. But for me, I think the Panthers are in an interesting situation right now because of getting Darnold. They also have Teddy Bridgewater. Their team is solid. And with the way that the beginning of this draft looks, it looks like there will be 2 quarterbacks available by pick 8. And Denver is probably, if they haven't traded up like you suggest that they will, Scott, Denver's going to be picking a quarterback at 9, which means 8 and 7 are basically the 2 places where a team can really go and offer something to trade up. And I think the Panthers are willing to listen to calls. They'll want to regain some of that draft capital they lost in trading for Darnold. And not only that, they can move back in the draft and select a guy that they want without having that pressure of having a top 10 pick and also gaining some assets in the move. So I think that New England Patriots will trade up to get pick 8, and Panthers will trade back and be able to add more weapons around Darnold and continue to improve their team. And New England is going to draft Trey Lance at number 8. And the reason I think Trey Lance is, obviously we've talked about him before on this show, unbelievable in 2019. I mean, over 2,700 passing yards, over 1,100 rushing yards, and a combined, 28 passing TDs and 14 rushing TDs. He's unbelievable. But he needs to be in a situation where he can somewhat sit a year maybe and learn from someone and continue to grow and be prepared for the NFL. And who better to go to than the New England Patriots? Not only do they do a great job of building players up and putting them in the right situation, but who better for a Trey Lance-style quarterback to learn under than Cam Newton? Cam Newton is the starter in New England, and I think that's a match made in heaven where Trey Lance can come in, learn from Newton, see how he runs the Patriot offense. And then also I think the Patriot roster is set up for a guy like Trey Lance to be successful. You just went out and got 2 massive tight ends. You're a run-first team for the most part, but you also like to be able to pass the ball. I think that they could run an offense similar to what you see Lamar Jackson do in Baltimore, where you are able to utilize the dual threat that is Trey Lance. And then also Josh McDaniels, the great OC that he is, would have a field day with having a guy like Trey Lance long-term as his quarterback. So I think New England's going to trade up with the Panthers to go at 8 and draft Trey Lance, and that's going to be the quarterback of the future for New England. And, anyone who might say, Mac Jones looks like the quarterback for the Patriots because of all the, comparisons to Tom Brady. Belichick has not been Belichick recently. He went out and spent a bunch of money in this offseason. He's doing non-Belichick things because I think he wants to go after Tom Brady. So why not continue that and go a little different and draft a guy like Trey Lance to be your quarterback of the future in New England?
Yeah, Matt, I'll be talking a little bit about that Mac Jones, Tom Brady comparison. And I wouldn't say Bill Belichick hasn't been Bill Belichick. He went out and got himself, 2 or 3 really good tight ends, and those are guys who he's used to coaching. You got Aaron Hernandez or Rob Gronkowski. Like, those are the types of guys he's been successful with. So I will get to that. But me and you, we do have the same trade lined up. But for the first time on this show, we will be picking different players. So I look at the Panthers. I think they trade back because they wanted to make a big splash at QB this offseason, and they were linked with Deshaun Watson, and eventually they just settled on Sam Darnold, and they picked up his 5th-year option. And so right now they're kind of telling him, hey, you know what? You got to show us that you can be this franchise QB. And so he's got the weapons offensively. Their defense is okay, but at this point, there's nothing that's really going to move the needle for them in terms of where they are right now. And so I think one team that will make that trade is the New England Patriots, and I have them coming up from 15 to take Mac Jones. The hype surrounding him has been exponential ever since his pro day, and I don't think the Patriots are really sold on Cam Newton. The last time the Patriots were relevant, like you said, it was when they had Tom Brady, and he was a spot-on pocket passer with all the confidence and leadership in the world, and that's exactly the same type of QB Mac Jones is. He's a traditional pocket passing, high IQ quarterback, and he's not very athletic, but that's what Bill Belichick has built his legacy with, and this makes so much sense for the Patriots and the Panthers because the Panthers are able to build some draft capital. And so give me Jones at 8. I really think he could do something with the Patriots and be their future QB.
Yeah, I want to hop in here because I think it's super interesting that you guys both expect the Patriots to move up. It wouldn't surprise me at all that happened. But, Matt, I think if the Patriots move up, I think the most unlikely scenario is that they draft Trey Lance after moving up. Because, like you guys mentioned, I forget actually which one of you mentioned it, but I think it's pretty clear that Bill Belichick is on a mission after what he just saw Tom Brady just do in Tampa Bay to prove that he is still the greatest coach of all time and that he never really needed a Tom Brady to be as great as he is. Drafting a Trey Lance does not get you to the playoffs, to the Super Bowl faster than drafting a Mac Jones does. Mac Jones is obviously –
so is Mac Jones beating out Cam Newton for the starting quarterback?
Hey, you said Trey Lance is kind of a Cam Newton-esque quarterback. I think we've seen the Cam Newton experience and how that's gone in New England. Trey Lance is just a smaller version of that.
That's Cam Newton after the injuries. We're not talking 2016 MVP Cam Newton. Don't even get me started with that. The reason Trey Lance would look great with Cam Newton is because he has that ability that you saw in Cam Newton when he got into the league. But with the knowledge that Newton has now and being a part of the Patriot way and all of that sort of stuff, it allows Newton once again, they didn't play great last year, but they also weren't terrible. They've added pieces. Newton should be able to come in this year and have a better season overall. And then you also allow Trey Lance to develop, who everyone is saying is the biggest boomer bust guy in this draft. But when you go to the Patriots, anyone who is boomer bust, his odds of booming are amplified by the nth degree because the Patriots are that good at utilizing the talent and really making it come
kind of a mute point because Bill Belichick hasn't drafted great. That's been the biggest knock of him, mainly as a GM, is he hasn't drafted great, especially at quarterback. Since Tom Brady, he's drafted 3 to 4 quarterbacks, and they've all been buns. He's missed on a ton of draft picks. But, back to the point with Cam Newton, I get the comparison or the idea that bringing in a Trey Lance who has a similar play style or skill set to Cam Newton and having them sit under Cam Newton and learn under Cam would make sense. But if we're being honest, I don't think Bill Belichick purposefully or it was his first option to bring in a Cam Newton. Well, let's be honest. There weren't many teams around the league or more than a couple that really wanted Cam Newton at this point on the roster. I think Bill Belichick saw an opportunity where he could pay Cam Newton, a cheap price and bring him into town and serve as a one-year option as a stopgap to what they're probably going to do on Thursday night, which is drafting a quarterback. And again, my point is Bill Belichick, if you're going to trade up, as you guys think, if you're going to give up draft capital, to move up, which is something we know Bill Belichick reveres his draft capital and his ability to be flexible within the draft, not only this year, but moving forward. If you're going to move up, it has to be for a quarterback, in my mind, for Bill Belichick, that he thinks he could possibly insert into the lineup sooner than later and win with sooner than later. And that has to be Mac Jones over Trey Lance, not to mention the rapport that obviously Bill Belichick has with Nick Saban and, the countless conversations they have throughout the year. I can't help but think, like you guys mentioned, if the Patriots move up, it will have to be for Mac Jones.
Right, I appreciate that, Scott. And don't get me wrong, Matt. I like Trey Lance a lot. I think he's going to be –
Same. And, yeah, I just want to – just for full disclosure, I have Trey Lance going at number 4 overall. I believe the Denver Broncos are the team that can trade up, and
but
really
then, Scott,
take
that makes no sense. That makes no sense if we want to go down this route.
Yes, it does.
No, it doesn't.
Tell me how it doesn't.
Who is Trey Lance learning from and sitting behind? Drew Lock? Drew Lock's going to teach Trey Lance how to be a quarterback in the NFL, because we've all said and admit that Trey Lance is going to need time to sit and wait and be prepared. The Denver Broncos need a guy like Mac Jones.
Matt, you're trying to compare Trey Lance to Cam Newton, and you're saying, they have the same playing style. They do the same types of things. But Trey Lance is not even a shell of what Cam Newton was coming into the league. So you can say, 2016 Cam Newton MVP season, whatever, he's going to be working with Trey Lance. He's not working with that guy anymore.
Okay.
Cam Newton has the know-how. He knows how to play in the league.
And why not? That's Trey Lance's ceiling, and why not go to a place where he can sit a year, watch what happens, learn how to be a New England Patriot, learn the offense, and continue to improve their, moving on.
This is why it makes sense, to your point, why I could see a Trey Lance going to a Denver at number 4, but not a New England and Bill Belichick at, a number 8 or number 9. Denver needs a superstar at quarterback. John Elway has been up there running things in Denver, and he has missed on quarterbacks almost draft after draft. He has an awful track record drafting quarterbacks. Paxton Lynch is in there. Obviously Drew Lock, I had hope for him, and I think he's still not done yet. And there's a couple other guys that he's drafted in Denver that just haven't panned out. The Broncos need a superstar in quarterback. That's never been Bill Belichick's system. He doesn't need a superstar at quarterback. He needs somebody who can sit in the pocket, deliver the ball, throw with anticipation, and utilize all the weapons that he just brought in and spent a bunch of money on in free agency.
He doesn't need a superstar, but he's had the best quarterback arguably in the history of the game for the last.
But we all know he's a superstar in terms of winning, but he doesn't have superstar talent. He was a pocket passer, a high IQ player who led his team. That's what Tom Brady was. That's what Mac Jones is.
That's my point, though. This is the Belichick of old. This is moving into the new NFL where a lot of quarterbacks are dual-threat quarterbacks that can move. Trey Lance is, to your point, possibly going to be a superstar.
Why not Tom Brady still won that Super Bowl this year, though. Tom Brady still won that Super Bowl this year. But, hey, now we got to follow up the 8th pick. The Denver Broncos are picking at 9. They are an intriguing young team with a defense that got unquestionably better this offseason. Matt, what do you think Denver does here?
To all of those points, I stand by the fact that, one, I think Trey Lance is going to go before the Broncos could pick, and they still want to get a quarterback. So the one that's remaining is Mac Jones. So just by that nature, I think Mac Jones will be the one that they draft. But other than that, I think that, Lance, once again, he's going to need time to be acclimated to the NFL. I think Jones is more prepared right away. And the Broncos, to your point, Luke, got improved on the defensive side. Not to mention they had so many injuries last year that had the Denver Broncos been healthy, their defense would have been one of the best. And actually, Mike Clay with ESPN projects that Denver, now that they're healthy and they've made some signings during the offseason, bringing in guys like Kyle Fuller and Ronald Darby, they're going to be one of the best, top 5 in the NFL for defense. So the defense,
and they made do with what they had last year. They had a lot of close losses, as is.
They did, and they had a lot of injuries. I mean, you lose Von Miller for the entire season before the season even starts. So, Denver's defense is going to be great. Vic Fangio is going to be great on that sense. They have a lot of unproven talent on the offensive side with Jerry Jeudy, Noah Fant. They'll probably draft a guy with their 40th pick. That's why I think going in and getting a Mac Jones is someone that will allow them to optimize their weapons and their ability to win right now, because even though you have to face Kansas City each year twice because they're in the same division, I think that Denver is closer to winning than they are to rebuilding, and I think Mac Jones would allow that. Not to mention Pat Shurmur has had time working with Eli Manning and Daniel Jones. And I think Mac Jones is somewhat relatable. Like their style of play is similar, pocket passers, that sort of thing. And not only that, but I think that, bringing in Jones, he can beat Drew Lock right away. Or if he doesn't beat out Drew Lock, then Drew Lock clearly, has stepped up and he can be that good. So I think it's a win-win in that sense. And the other thing that's important is Mac Jones is a guy that when you have a defense like Denver is supposed to have this year, all you really need is a guy that's not going to turn the ball over and is going to be a great game manager. And above everything else, that's what Mac Jones continues to be, projected as, is a guy that can come in, run your offense, run it effectively, run it efficiently, and not turn the ball over. And if you have a defense like Denver's supposed to have, that's exactly what you want at quarterback. So go get Mac Jones, have him battle it out with Drew Lock and really see what you have moving forward. And then you can address the offense now that the defense is taken care of.
Yeah, so 2 weeks ago, like we just mentioned a bit, 2 weeks ago I said I would expect Atlanta, to trade back with Denver so that the Broncos could select Trey Lance, number 4 overall. And the Falcons would look pretty smart if they still end up with the best linebacker and maybe even best defensive player in this draft after acquiring more draft capital. It's not often that you see a 250-pound linebacker run a 4.36 40-yard dash. But Michael Parsons don't come around too often. This is another guy who played big as a true freshman like Sewell. Parsons had a team-high 83 tackles in 2018 on his way to freshman All-America status and improved a ton the following season before opting out in 2020. He's ridiculously explosive, athletic, and is a tackling machine who plays sideline to sideline with a natural ability to rush the passer. He had 5 sacks in 2019. He wasn't even really asked to rush the passer like that. We see the game-changing impact that elite-level athletic linebackers can make, just in this past Super Bowl with Devin White and Levante David of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and how impactful they were in that Super Bowl win. The Falcons have a myriad of holes to fill with most of these coming on the defensive side of the ball. So selecting a potential perennial team leader in tackles who can make an impact right away, day one, makes the most sense here for Atlanta. I expect Micah Parsons, the Penn State linebacker, to land in Atlanta at number 9 here.
Sure, and I actually have the Broncos. Scott, a couple weeks ago, you had mentioned the Broncos trading up and getting Trey Lance at 4. I think they can get him here at 9 in their normal spot, and so I'm going to talk about that a little bit. The Broncos are a team that I'm super excited to watch this year, and I was last year too. They have so much youth and talent with Jerry Jeudy, Cortland Sutton coming back, KJ Hamler, Noah Fant. It's seriously unreal, and those guys are all so young. But there's one common denominator that's holding them back, and it's Drew Lock. He's careless. He makes too many mistakes. He doesn't give their offense a chance to thrive. Their young pieces are only going to be as good as he will be, and that's why I think, they need to bring in somebody who has amazing rollout and pass film, some incredible scrambling numbers and improvisation skills, and that's Trey Lance. I think Trey Lance has less passing attempts by a significant amount than every other round 1 QB from Davis Mills up. And he has still gotten to this point. It speaks to his potential. He had a 28 touchdown, 0 interception season. His potential is off the charts. So I think you bring him in, you grow him alongside your young core, and the Broncos could be a problem for a while. Matt, I know you said you think they're closer to winning, and that's why you bring in Mac Jones. I think they're in a rebuild phase, and I think it's going very well. And I think the cherry on top of that would be a QB that can grow alongside those pieces. Scott, it looked like you had something to say.
Yeah, I was just going to add to that. Obviously I have Trey Lance also going to Denver, and I think it makes a lot of sense. I think it sounds right that all 3 of us have, a quarterback going to Denver because, when you look at the landscape of the AFC West, Patrick Mahomes is in Kansas City. Justin Herbert is in LA with the Chargers looking like a real future star. And obviously Derek Carr in Las Vegas is still, a fringe top 10 or 12 quarterback. So if you're the Denver Broncos and you're sitting with Drew Lock in your lap, who is really kind of underperformed so far as a pro, you have to, if you're John Elway, you kind of have to make a move in this draft, within that top 10 if you're not moving up from number 9. So, I think this is almost a foregone conclusion. I think we all got it right. Whether it is Mac Jones or Trey Lance, it'll probably be a Trey Lance. But I think it's right that John Elway and the Broncos go ahead and select a quarterback here on Thursday night.
Right, and I think the Broncos have they've said in these past couple of weeks that they're very high on Drew Lock, and I think that's just nothing more than a smokescreen. I don't think they want to give away, their potential plan and their potential pick. I do think they go quarterback, and like you said, I think Trey Lance would be the guy, but Mac Jones could go there as well, Matt. But to round out the top 10, the Dallas Cowboys will be making a pick. They'll be getting Dak Prescott back this season, so they'll be a team to watch in the NFC East. Scott, what do you think Dallas will be doing at 10?
Jerry Jones and the Dallas Cowboys haven't drafted a defensive back in the first round of an NFL draft since Morris Claiborne in 2012. And it's probably why they gave up nearly 30 points per game last year and allowed 34 touchdown passes, which tied the Jets and the Jaguars for third worst. The defense, especially the secondary, is beleaguered, to say the least. But drafting Alabama cornerback Patrick Surtain II would be a step in that right direction. The 2020 SEC Defensive Player of the Year is everything you want in a cover corner. The ability to play man, zone, and press coverage with serious length and speed. This man has an 87.5-inch wingspan with massive 10-inch hands and runs a 4.4 40-yard dash to boot. He was arguably the best player on a loaded Alabama defense and finished his career with 38 consecutive starts. My favorite part about him as a prospect and top 10 pick is that he faced the best talent week in and week out, which is much more important for a cornerback than some other positions with how often top corners are left in one-on-one situations. Whether it was the best receiver on an SEC opponent or the bevy of top-tier talent that he saw in practice, from the Jerry Judys to the Henry Ruggs, Devontae Smith, Jalen Waddles of the world right there at Alabama. Surtain II was tested daily, when with an offense, as you mentioned, Luke, with a healthy Dak Prescott, Zeke Elliott, and elite wide receivers, Jerry Jones needs to make sure that this defense doesn't hold the Cowboys back any longer. Drafting Patrick Surtain II would certainly help in that regard, and that's what they should do.
Yeah, Scott, I'm going to be an echo chamber right here because I agree. It has to be Patrick Surtain, who's ranked as the best corner in the draft. Just to go into a specific, like you said, they gave up 34 passing TDs, and obviously a decent amount of that is going to come in the red zone. Over the last 2 years, Surtain has had 662 press coverage snaps. Like, he is unbelievable, man to man.
He's a press coverage demon.
Yeah. Unbelievable. He is just an animal. Not to mention he has the Alabama pedigree, which when you want to get somebody on your defense, it's really hard to beat the Alabama pedigree. Not to mention they already have two other Alabama DBs on their team in Trayvon Diggs and Savion Smith. So obviously that will help with the chemistry of the secondary. And he's a guy that'll come in and he'll be your number one cornerback right from the get-go. And for a team that is, once again, we always talk about win now, and I probably say this a lot, but the NFC East is garbage. It's complete garbage. And with Dak Prescott coming back healthy with the weapons they have on offense, if you can just, hold teams to not 30, maybe just 25, because Dak will probably average 30 points a game. If you can just hold them to 25, Surtain's a guy that can do that for you and help you do that and allow that Dallas Cowboy team to optimize their ability and all that money they've put towards the offense.
You better ease up on the NFC East because I'm telling you, the Jalen Hurts show in Philly is coming, and Danny Dimes with Kenny Galladay in New York. That's going to be
Don't forget that man Kenny G is in the East now. Yes, sir.
And the football team, more
relative.
Years for
it's
Gibson,
still in the
more
NFC
years
East.
for McLaurin. This NFC East is coming. They have nice young talent, but for now, like you said, they're garbage. But they're getting better. They're getting better. And number two,
we'll go 9-8 this year. It's going to be nice.
The popular pick here is Patrick Surtain, and an Alabama product, who just had the highest graded season ever for an Alabama defensive back. That includes Micah Fitzpatrick, Marlon Humphrey, and more. But I think the Cowboys should go with J.C. Horn. He's got the size to defend bigger wide receivers. In fact, Kyle Pitts, who we all agreed could be a generational NFL talent, we said that last week on this show, he said that J.C. Horn was his toughest matchup all season long. The only college wide receiver to ever get 50-plus yards on him was Heisman Trophy winner Devontae Smith, who just scraped by with 60-something yards. But what sets him apart, and he said it recently, is it's the way that he competes night in and night out. He's a competitor. He's confident. He's like Jalen Ramsey, and we've seen how that's worked out for Jalen Ramsey. And those two have actually worked out together. So I say you go for the guy whose arrow is pointing directly up, and you see what you can get out of him. So give me a Horn to round out my top 10. Those are our top 10. Go ahead, Scott.
Luke, let me tell you why you're dead wrong. I love J.C. Horn. I think he's the second best corner in this draft by far, and I think the Jalen Ramsey comparison is on point just because of his toughness, his tenacity, and just his swagger and how he carries himself. He never believes that the guy lining across from him is better than him or is going to get the best of him. So for those reasons, and obviously he's an exceptional talent. He can obviously, play a cover corner, zone coverage, and whatnot. I love J.C. Horn. He's going to be a top 15 to 20 pick. But he can't be selected before Patrick Surtain II. First off, J.C. Horn, two things about J.C. Horn. The first thing, he's too handsy, and NFL refs love to call pass interference. He was flagged 8 times in 7 games in 2020. The second thing is he has a bit of a tackling issue. He missed 20. He has 24 career missed tackles, which is nearly 1 per game for his career. So those are 2 glaring issues at a cornerback spot. Especially when you're talking about drafting him in the top 10 to 15 range. Those are 2 things that, makes you grade out below a Patrick Surtain who really checks all of those boxes when it comes to coverage, tackling, and all those things that come with being an elite number 1 cover corner.
Sure, 2 glaring issues, though, and he's still here being considered the number 1 cornerback potentially in the draft. And that's why I think he's put up the numbers he did with, like you said, getting pass interference calls and missing some tackles. Those are things that can be taught. Those are things that can be taught. Like, you can't teach his size, though. You can't teach just his tenacity. Those are things that come with a player that's part of who they are and that, that builds their character. That's who he is. I don't know if Patrick Surtain has that. So that's why I said this is more of a potential pick for me. His arrow is pointing straight up, and that's why I think they should take him. But those are our top 10 picks. It'll be exciting to see how things shake out and envision top talents with new teams. But plenty of other names will be called throughout the draft. And Matt, which first-round projected player outside of the top 10 is your favorite entering the draft?
For me, it's going to be the first running back to come off the board. It's Najee Harris out of Alabama. It's, once again, I feel like the NFL draft is always an Alabama show, and because they always have an amazing amount of talent going in the first 2 rounds. Najee Harris has been unbelievable. I mean, this last season, he had 251 rushes for over 1,400 yards and 26 TDs. He showed off his ability to be a receiving option as well with 43 receptions, 425 yards, and 4 TDs. On the receiving end. And not only that, but this is the biggest thing when it comes to running backs, besides being able to show that they can be dual threat, because that's so important now. You can't just run the ball. You have to be able to also be an option in the passing game. He is unbelievable coming out of college at addressing at pass protection and picking up the blitz. And that is something that is a premium in the NFL. You will talk to any coach on the offensive side or any GM on the offensive side. If you can draft a guy who is not as great as a runner as some other guys, but they're better in pass protection than like the 2-3 guys that might be ahead of them in the draft, the NFL, those coaches will probably go for the guy that's better in pass protection because it's so vital to what every offense wants to do nowadays. And then you throw into that he's probably the best, one of the best runners. He can receive the ball and he can protect the pocket. That's huge. And so I think that he's going to go off the board fairly. I wouldn't say fairly early. I'd say around 20. There's a lot of teams that will look to add an option like that. And he can be, come in right away and be 3-down NFL back. I mean, he's ready to go into the NFL. I think Miami at 18 makes a lot of sense. I think the Jets at 23. I think the Steelers at 24. If the Bills didn't have some other, places that they needed to address, I think the Bills adding him would be huge. And then if there's any team that trades back into the later rounds of the first round, I think that makes a lot of sense. I know Atlanta has been a team that's been mentioned. Denver has also been talked about. I mean, those are some teams that I could see you bring in a Najee Harris, and he's going to be an instant, difference maker on your offense.
I love Najee Harris. I think he's going to be the best running back in this class by far. And you got me excited. I also believe, I said it before on the show, I hopefully believe that the Miami Dolphins pull that trigger and draft him with the number 18 pick, that he would just bring another dimension to that Miami offense, give them an identity that I know Brian Flores would love. So, I love that idea. And, even Najee Harris, going to Pittsburgh and, to the Steel City, we all know that Pittsburgh, the Steelers historically love to run the ball and play defense. I think he'd be a great fit there as well. But, you mentioned, with Najee Harris, the ability to pass block, is so critical to an offense. Something else that's so critical to the other side of the ball on the defensive tip is rushing the passer. Any defense, whoever drafts Miami's Jalen Phillips might be getting the best edge rush talent in the 2021 class. First and foremost, in the interest of full disclosure, the only reason Jalen Phillips isn't a surefire top 10 pick is because of a relatively serious injury history. An ankle injury cut his freshman season at UCLA short. A wrist injury required multiple procedures, and he retired from football after the 2018 season, due to multiple concussions, which is a legitimate concern. But he's such an elite talent. He was a 5-star recruit out of high school, ranked the number 6 nationally in 2017, ahead of guys like Chase Young. And, he really showed it, when he transferred to Miami for the 2020 season. He had 15.5 tackles for loss, 8 sacks. He was a second-team All-American. He ran a 4.57 40-yard dash at 6'6", 260 pounds. Just a rare combination of athleticism, size, and length that can get to the quarterback in a hurry with a lightning-quick first step off the ball. Like I said, the medical history is concerning and a big reason why he won't go in the top 10. But one team is going to be very happy that it worked out that way when it selects Jalen Phillips. And if I'm looking at a team, I would think it has to be the Las Vegas Raiders sitting at number 17. Obviously, I lamented, their issues this offseason and, the lack of, innovation that they showed in terms of the free agency. But this is a team that needs to get better on the defensive side, specifically rushing the passer. Max Crosby led the Raiders in sacks last season with just 7. So that's just a department of that defense that needs to be improved. Jalen Phillips would definitely be that guy. Luke, who's your guy that you're looking at in terms of a sleeper here in the first round?
Yeah, I know you like this guy too. I got Rashod Bateman. I think the idea of a top team like the Ravens or the Packers drafting Rashod Bateman in the late first round is just flat out scary. Bateman did not play in the 2020 season. He opted out with the COVID-19 concerns, and he thought that was the best for him to focus on his pro career. And obviously it's been working out because this is another guy whose arrow is pointing straight up. In 2019, he had 46 receptions on balls thrown 10-plus yards, and which led all of college football. Since 2019, he's also had the 3rd most explosive plays in the NCAA, and that's in just one season of work. He's recently drawn comparisons to Stephon Diggs in terms of his route running and his speed. There's been videos of him popping up recently dunking on dudes in high school basketball. Like, he is just an insane athlete who he's explosive. He makes high energy plays. He can change the landscape of a game in any given snap. He's a pro-ready prospect who's just 21 years old with some size. I hope a different team realizes his potential before he falls into the late first round, because I'm telling you, if you pair him with Lamar Jackson or you put him next to Devontae Adams with Aaron Rodgers, it's going to be scary for the rest of the league.
I love Rashod Bateman. His 2019 season was exceptional. He was for sure the best receiver in the Big Ten, if not the best receiver in the entire country. And like you mentioned, getting him in Baltimore, I would hope the Baltimore Ravens, after trading away their left tackle, their star left tackle to the Kansas City Chiefs to get an additional first-round pick, I would hope that they would utilize that opportunity to grab a wide receiver for Lamar Jackson. And if it so happens to be, someone as talented, as Rashod Bateman, I think that makes, the idea of them trading away, such a premier, valued left tackle to the biggest rival in the AFC, I think they'd make that move look a lot, worse than it probably is. But Rashod Bateman is a future star. And I've heard as much, just from friends and, colleagues around the University of Minnesota football program, that he's the real deal. So I believe that, just along with tape as well.
And if the Ravens don't take him, they better trade up for my guy Julio Jones. Julio and Lamar Jackson, that's a Super Bowl contending team. I'm saying it right now. You guys already know I have them there, and that will just further solidify it. Julio Jones in Baltimore would be incredible. But again, this year's draft begins at 8 p.m. Eastern time on Thursday night and will run through Saturday. The next generation of NFL stars will see their dreams come true, and we are anxious to see how it all pans out. Thanks for watching Chalk Talk today from myself, Scott Proctor, and Matt Morris. Enjoy the draft, and we'll see you in 2 weeks for some more sports today.